Well, it's official. Friday, December 13th, 1963. 4 guys shot their own legs off.
Mad Men is a phenomenal show. Through the lens of this glamorous bygone era of advertising, we follow these characters who find themselves living through a decade of some of the most pivotal changes in American history. The show mostly follows Donald Draper, creative director at the fictional Sterling Cooper advertising agency on Madison Avenue in New York City, along with a large ensemble of characters who work alongside him. Mad Men is full of memorable scenes. The whole show is a masterclass in writing, direction, and storytelling, but today I want to focus on one scene in particular, a scene that I think is practically perfect. The scene takes place roughly 15 minutes into the season 3 finale, titled Shut the Door, Have a Seat. The episode title is in reference to the series of life-altering conversations that occur throughout, from Don's conversation with Peggy as he asks her to join the new firm, to Don and Betty's conversation with their children as they break the news about their divorce.
What did we do?
Nothing.
And why are we in the living room?
Going into this third season, Sterling Cooper had just been bought by a British agency called Putnam Powell & Lowe, looking to expand their influence into the US, and things have not exactly gone smoothly.
Mr. Sterling's not on that chart at all. It's true.
Oh, well, that was an oversight.
But in episode 313, the season's penultimate episode, everything suddenly changes. In the first scene of the episode, Don attends what he thinks is a routine meeting with a client, and is told that PPL, and thus Sterling Cooper with it, is being sold to a much larger advertising agency, McCann Erickson. Don knows that if this deal goes through, Sterling Cooper will get swallowed up and become part of McCann, rather than remaining an independently operated subsidiary like they had under PPL. And after rejecting a job offer from them 2 seasons ago, the last thing Don wants is to give up all of his creative control and become a mid-level cog at McCann.
It's a sausage factory. I turned them down 3 years ago.
So Don takes this information to his boss, Bert Cooper, who insists that he'll need to bring in the other half of Sterling Cooper, Roger Sterling, because of his relationship with the firm's biggest client, American Tobacco. After some convincing, the three decide to partner up and offer to buy back their company from PPL instead of being sold to McCann.
So you do want to be in advertising after all.
So Don, Roger, and Bert meet with their overseer, Lane Price, to make an offer.
We want to buy back the company. We're willing to offer the purchase price plus 12%. It's worth more than that now.
And they're rejected. Lane is under the impression that only Sterling Cooper is being sold, and that his place will remain at PPL.
But your information isn't completely correct. Only Sterling Cooper is being sold. PPL, well, will remain PPL.
But when he later calls home to his superiors in London to tell them that the others have learned of the sale, he's informed that PPL is indeed being sold as well.
Well, where's my place in this?
With McCann, I suppose. There, Lane. They know you're essential to the transition.
And then what?
And thus, he too will be absorbed into McCann. And this is what leads us to the scene in question.
Your guests have arrived?
Close the door. Have a seat.
In this scene, we've got 4 main players. First, there's Don, who desperately wants not to go to McCann, but is stuck in a contract with a non-compete. Part of this comes from his general tendency to run from his problems in his past, as to not get caught in the lie that is his entire identity, but also partially from his desire to stay in creative and personal control. Then there's Roger, who's newly married to a second wife and is much less desperate to avoid McCann. He has a much shorter contract than Don and is mostly just happy retiring when it expires.
Well, they've only got me for a year. You for what, 3? We'll make another run at it.
Then we have Bert Cooper, the company's founder and oldest living partner, who, because of his age, is also on the verge of retirement. He's not very happy with the way his life's work has been run under PPL, and he has good reason to want it freed from the control of a parent company. And lastly, there's Lane Price, who, after he is initially almost smug in his rejection of their offer, suddenly finds out that he's basically in the same predicament as the others. And so the scene plays out in 2 parts. Part 1 is the fight, as Don's desperation ramps up into anger until it gives way to an idea, and part 2 is the conspiracy, as the partners realize this idea can work and make a plan to see it through. Let's start at the top, with part 1.
Close the door. Have a seat.
What's he doing here?
You gonna read us your will? I want the Cadillac.
Right off the bat, there's some confusion as to why we're here. Bert asks why Lane is there because he doesn't share in their interests, and Roger asks if they're there to hear Don's will, implying Don would rather off himself than go to McCann. He also makes a little subtle callback to Don's Cadillac Coupe de Ville, the one he bought last season on Roger's recommendation.
I couldn't sleep. And I thought,
Why don't we go to McCann directly?
There's a few reasons why Don's having trouble sleeping. On top of all the uncertainty at work, his marriage is falling apart and he's sleeping in the guest room, which has a trickle-down effect to his children and gets him thinking about his own father. We'll get back to this later.
Because you can't, it's done.
You're not even going to ask.
I did yesterday. And you were right, PPL is being sold. So it seems we're all going to McCann.
They catch you loose.
Roger gets a brief moment to be smug towards Lane after Lane so smugly rejected their offer earlier, and Lane confirms what we already knew. PPL and Sterling Cooper have both been sold.
I want you to find out what the price was and give us a shot.
Enough! Should fire you for even trying to involve me in this conspiracy.
Lane is done hearing Don's suggestions. He's made it quite clear that there's nothing he can do to stop this deal, and he even turns towards the door to leave, but then stops short.
Go ahead. It's the only thing you did well here.
This is in reference to all the staffing cuts that Lane carried out on behalf of PPL when they first bought Sterling Cooper.
John, let it go.
Bert tries to de-escalate things, but Lane snaps back.
I did a great many things here.
And he did. As CFO, his job is to keep the company profitable, and considering they're up 12% over just a short period of time, he must be doing his job well.
Have another. It's 9:30 for God's sake.
Roger makes a small comment on Don's drinking fueling this unearned anger. Alcoholism is a theme that pops up many times on this show.
Jesus, that's right. You have absolute authority to fire anyone. Fire us.
This right here is Don at his very best, when desperation forces him to come up with a creative solution to get himself out of a pickle. It mirrors the Lucky Strike pitch back in the show's pilot episode, when Don is backed into a corner and has nothing to show, and then suddenly someone says something that makes a light bulb go off in his
At least we
head.
know if we have this problem, everybody has this problem.
Gentlemen, before you leave, can I just say something? We have 6 identical companies making 6 identical products. We can say anything we want.
And it ends up winning him the pitch. Just the same as in this scene, Don's light bulb moment is triggered by Lane's suggestion that he fire them, because he can, as Don says, fire them, let them go, and sever their contracts.
Fire us.
Lane's eyes dart around the room as he tries to figure out what to make of all this. His expression is hard to pin down. He's both surprised and also scoffing at the audacity of this idea. A moment of brilliant acting by Jared Harris.
Fire us. Sever our contracts. Let us go.
Bert gives just a hint of a smile, a small but significant indication that he knows exactly what's happening.
Can you do that?
Why would I?
Because once this sale goes through, you'll be thrown overboard and you'll be a corpse knocking against their hull.
Of course, Lane already knows this. From as soon as he found out about PPL's sale, he knew he'd be obsolete as soon as the transition was complete. Unlike many of the other characters on Mad Men, Lane is an immigrant to New York. He's just moved his family out there, and he's not ready to leave so soon. But in case he needs another reason,
Nothing good ever came from seeking revenge.
Nonsense. We'll make you a partner.
Lane realizes he holds all of the power here, as the only one who can fire them.
I should think this is worth more than that.
And Don realizes this too.
So we're negotiating. We'll put your name on the door.
I don't know.
Do you know how to do what he does?
I don't.
And Roger doesn't either. They need Lane, not just to fire them, but to help them run this potential new company.
It could be done.
The scene shifts. Part 2. The partners go from standing in disarray around the room to orderly sitting 2 by 2 across from one another. They go from tense, standing disagreements to calm, relaxed collusion.
But getting you, us, out of here isn't the difficult part. We need accounts.
Let's say we have Lucky Strike.
And although that's, let's see, $23 million in billings,
24.
we'd still need another third for cash flow.
This gives our characters a clearly defined goal. They need to secure $12 million worth of business.
Well, I can't take anyone else. Or Lee Garner Sr. won't think that he's special. What about Hilton?
Here they're talking about Conrad Hilton, the head of Hilton Hotels, who was the client who tipped Don off to PPL's sale at the beginning of the episode. He's also partially the reason Don is stuck in this mess, as it was on his request that Don be signed to a 3-year contract.
What about Hilton?
No.
Don's one-word answer here is enough to give us an idea of how he felt about Hilton, who was a particularly difficult client, and not one that he's willing to bring along.
No.
Well, can we get any of our other accounts?
We'll get them.
If I were to send a telex in at noon today that you've all been sacked, it's after close of business in London. It would remain unnoticed until Monday morning there, 2 a.m. here. That gives us today and the weekend to first gather accounts and then a skeleton staff to service them.
So this convenient difference in time zones, and the fact that it happens to be a Friday, allows them to get away with poaching these accounts completely unnoticed by their bosses across the pond. This also establishes a clear timeline for our characters. They have less than 72 hours to secure $12 million worth of business. But that's not all.
And of course, we would have to obtain all the materials required for continuity of service.
Obtain. We have to steal everything.
And lastly, they establish the stakes.
Anyone approached must be a certainty. If news spreads, they'll lock us out.
Did we vote or something?
And then, with the decision made,
Well, gentlemen, I suppose you're fired.
Well, it's official. Friday, December 13th, 1963. 4 guys shot their own legs off.
and then finally, with the plan in place, execution.
Allison, Mr. Price has requested an office-wide memo. The office is closed.
The rest of the episode sees these 4 partners going out and doing their part to put this plan in action. Bert brings in Harry Crane to run the media department, Roger brings in Joan and helps Don to get Pete to join with his accounts, Don brings in Peggy for creative, and Lane does his part by letting London know of the firing and allowing this whole scenario to take place. And by the end of the episode, they have a new company.
Good morning. Sterling Cooper Draper Price. How may I help you?
What makes all of this so thrilling is that while it is mostly just office drama, the episode structure mirrors that of a heist movie. We have characters forming an unlikely alliance, concocting a plan, and establishing what's at stake if things go wrong, and then they pull it off, breaking in, stealing the materials, and making off before anyone can realize what's happening. And this one perfect scene is the moment where this heist is set into motion. It's the turning point of the episode, and according to showrunner Matt Weiner, the turning point of the whole show. Episode 312, the one prior to this one, is about the assassination of John F. Kennedy, and the episode after, the season 4 premiere, picks up with the new firm moved into their new mid-century modern offices in the Time Life building. All of season 3, there's a sense of not knowing who's in charge, and the JFK assassination brings this sentiment to the forefront, hence that episode's title, The Grown-Ups.
What the hell is going on?
The whole nation has just been rocked by the death of their collective father figure, just like how Don in the next episode recalls the death of his own father. Throughout episode 313, there's these scenes weaved in about how Don's father broke away from his farming collective when grain prices collapsed. In a drunken stupor, he tries to ride into town in the middle of the night to sell his grain and is killed after being kicked in the head by his horse. And this is exactly what keeps Don up the night before he calls this meeting.
I couldn't sleep. And I thought, why don't we go to
Unlike his father, who pushed away his allies after being backed into a corner, Don comes to realize he must put aside his ego and embrace the strengths of the people around him in order for this plan to succeed.
With you or without you, I'm moving on. And I don't know if I can do it alone. Will you help me?
You know, Mad Men is my favorite show of all time, and this scene perfectly exemplifies what I love so much about it, and what keeps bringing me back to the show time and time again. Despite being only 3¼ minutes long, this scene brings together 4 characters with distinct individual motivations and drives forward the story in lasting and significant ways. It's the scene that takes Don and the partners from wondering who's in charge to being in charge, and in doing so, changes the entire trajectory of the show. It's brilliantly written, wonderfully acted, and maybe most importantly, it's entertaining as hell to watch.